first of all, so was there one thing that you wanted to remember from this this clinic? So one thing.
Okay. I mean, the one thing that like struck me is both on takeoff and on landing, how you really got to let everything go and just let it come into the palm of your hand and don't grip it. And that was like the mantra at the beginning of the launch and at the end of the landings.
And if you want to be able to stay up for a long time in the air and not get exhausted, then you need to use the good technique. And it's not necessarily a light touch, it's an active. So the activity is the thing that's going to make it so that the glider is going to be ready to respond.
Right.
So I've got some homework for you guys. And the homework says, I want you to go onto YouTube and I want you to put in hang gliding and world record. Okay, that's a great video just on its own. Anybody seen it here yet? No?
Distance record?
475 miles, but it's two guys who are flying together, and the one guy is Johnny Duran Jr., who is basically just talking to you, the camera. And he's flying along and he's telling you, oh, it's getting hungry, mate. So he goes and pulls out a candy bar and strips off the thing and takes a bite. Oh, that's really good, you know. Anyway, the guy's quite charming, but what I want you to watch is I want you to watch the middle of the day. I want you to see how he's moving. So it's really great because, you know, he's looking right at the camera, talking to the camera, and he's moving around. You know, he's doing this stuff, you know, and the glider's just flying along. So that movement that he's making, it makes him ready to respond to it. And every once in a while, he has to give it a harder shove, but most of the time, he's just doing this little thing. It's a constant movement.
Constant correcting.
It's not corrections. It's constantly allowing, having the glider be ready to be able to respond.
Okay.
So when the glider's got it gives it a little bit of instability. So now, at the end of the day, just before he's ready to land, the air is very smooth, there's hardly a bump, and I want you to watch the amount of movement that he's doing. So compare the two, the amount of movement in the middle of the day, that's turbulent, the amount of movement at the end of the day. And what you'll notice is the people who have good takeoffs and good landings and can stay up for a long time, they move.
But that seems counterintuitive. If you're moving a lot, you would get tired.
Well, what happens is the movement makes it so that, well, let me tell you this story. So I've got a guy who comes out here with his wife, and the two of them are flying. They've learned from us, oh gosh, I don't know, like 6 years before. And so the two of them fly, and after watching him fly, when he landed, the very first time I towed him up, I said, so how long can you stay up in thermals? And he says, oh, about 45 minutes, and I'm just getting exhausted. I said, well, I could tell that by looking at how you were responding to the tow. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to not just stay over there and put all your force into it to be able to make the glider do what you want. Instead, what I want is a little bit of action, and then bump and then go back, and if you need to, bump it and hit it again. The glider is a flex wing. It needs to flex. If you want to flex a trampoline, you don't push against it. You bounce on it. Okay? So you bounce and that glider will change shape. You put a GoPro camera on the rear of your glider so you can see you and you can see the trailing edge. And when you go like this, you can see the wing going like this.
We put one on the king post once and was amazed at how much the tip of the wing just changes shape and moves around.
Oh, yeah.
Very interesting.
So, anyway, that little bit of movement makes it so that then you can use a lot less effort instead of going, and then putting your elbow around there and throwing your feet over, you're putting your tongue over there, give it the extra weight, you know. Now, so anyway, try that. You'll find that you can stay up for hours. So, here's the end of the story. So he said, okay, you know, I could see how when I remembered, the glider responded with a lot less effort and a lot more quickly. So, two things, not just less effort, but more quickly, less effort. Bonus. So he goes to Whole Mountain that weekend and gets in a 3-hour flight in thermals. Success.
Yeah.
So, if you're one of those guys who comes down bathed in sweat, you may want to use some different technique. And one of the easy ways to be able to tell if you're using the technique is to come out and tow with me, because it'll become obvious to you if you're moving correctly on the tow. And if you're not, then you come down and you go, man, I had to work really hard. Try the bump. Bumping works good. So what kind of a bump? Well, it's a bumping hand towards hip. as opposed to like bumping this way rather than using pulling like this and pushing like that. No. Mostly what you're doing is you're pulling hand towards hip. You can actually control the glider left and right by pulling with one hand. Think about that for a second. Is that alien or what? So you see, you're going to actually end up being able to enjoy your flying a whole lot more. You don't have to fly when it's totally smooth or flying at Funston. You can actually fly in thermals that are bumpy, turbulent, if you use good technique.
And you coming out here in tow, you can tell what if people have the right technique.
Obvious. Oh yeah. I've only towed, I don't know, something like 12,000 times. And the reason why I wanted a GoPro camera was because I wanted to be able to show people what it is that they're doing. So now I've got my laptop and I've got the instant viewing booth. So the laptop sits in the suitcase. You take all the black cloth and you throw it over your head, and now you can see it. You can put your cursor right on your feet, and you can see whether you're moving your weight effectively, or mostly you're moving half your weight. So if you're only using half your weight and you're being still most of the time, you're going to find that you're going to be exhausted pretty darn quickly. So you want to use all your weight. You want to move in a pendular fashion, as opposed to like some part move here, there, and you'll do that whether it's flying prone or it's flying upright. So many people, when they come in for a landing, they think that it's the turbulence that made it so they couldn't control the glider.
Actually, their own inputs.
It's true no matter what type of aircraft you're flying. You know when you're flying in a plane and everybody cheers for the pilot after it was turbulent? So, and I've got an agreement with this with the guys who are commercial pilots. You don't know if that turbulence was actually caused by the pilot. He wasn't trying to. He's just behind the curve. So you have somebody who's really good, and people go, no big deal, it's smooth air. But you get a guy, the turbulence starts when the autopilot is no longer there and the guy takes over. That's when the turbulence starts. Because the guy's behind the curve. So keep a little movement
Maybe
going.
he just wants the applause. Oh,
You know what?
Pump them up a little bit, then they'll
I
cheer
don't
me.
think so.
They cannot hear the applause.
No.
It's soundproof. It's soundproof. They cannot hear the applause. They hear about it afterwards when the crew tells them, "Hey, you got the big hand." So pretty cool. Okay, so let's see. Let's talk about some of these things here. So we talk about tight strap, launch, or loose. So if the winds are calm, you don't want to have a tight strap when you're standing there, because then you have to hold it up with all kinds of force. And we know that we need to have a light touch so we can feel and we can move. So you can start out with a loose strap, but if the wind's blowing and it's my glider weighs like 5 pounds, heck, I'm not going to keep it on my shoulders. I'll pull it all. I can hold 5 pounds and still keep a light touch, so I'll pull it all the way up there. And I can just run for takeoff. I've already got that part where it floats.
What about
up.
at a launch like Yosemite?
Oh no, you don't want to have that thing tight, because then you
don't want
can't feel. No, you just stand there and you just start walking, and the thing floats on up, just like we did when we took our hands off. Of course, you have to do it a few times so you might believe, because it takes a whole lot of belief there on the edge of that cliff.
Yeah.
Okay, so loose is fine, tight is fine. You just remember, you don't want to be gripping onto the down tubes, because how likely is it you're going to have a light touch? Yeah, probably not. Okay, angle of attack. It's not nearly as important that you have that your angle of attack be just perfect, as far as not having the nose up too high. If it's gusty and stuff, probably would have the nose a bit lower. You put the nose way down low in a lot of wind, and it's really coming on up, and you're thinking, man, I don't want to let this thing up an inch. It's going to flip me right over. Well, it turns out that have somebody on the front wires, let the nose up a little bit, and you'll find, hey, what do you know? I can keep myself on the ground without keeping it way the heck down there. So everybody's got the keep the nose down low. You know that could be a problem. You want that glider to float. You don't want to keep pushing the bar out, though. If you have to push out to take off, you've got a flaw in your takeoff technique. So that's that simple. Because the gliders, if you run for takeoff and you're just holding it here, and you let it slide through your fingers, okay, now your hands are around here, you're pulling with your harness, your weight is forward of the center of gravity, simply by pulling the glider with your harness. Okay, when it comes time to take off, you let the bar out and you'll take off. Okay, so that's angle of attack. I've actually done a launch out here where I put the keel on the ground, got the wheels, the control bar right in front of me, kept pulling with my harness, got my hands off of it, and I just start running. Okay, I start running and the glider picks up, it floats up behind me, I'm pulling with my harness, and then I just do a little stutter step to get it to take off, and away I go. Hands off completely. Now, the question is, was my nose too high?
Of course, started out.
Was it too high though?
No.
It seems it wasn't too high. So the problem is not that
It would have
the
been too
nose
high
is,
after you kept it at that angle.
I'm not even touching it though.
Cranked it itself. It flew
See,
out.
all
I know,
said-
but if you weren't using
If
the
I was-
proper technique,
if
and
I
you
was
kept
pushing,
it at that
if
height,
I was pushing it with my hands,
yeah, and you kept it that way.
then I would be in deep trouble.
Yeah.
But if I pull with my harness, the nose will come down, and then it'll plane, and it'll just start flying off. So you'll find that it's a whole lot easier to do a decent takeoff than you would ever think. Okay, we talked about grip quite a bit. You guys know that if you're gripping, you're guessing. The tighter the grip, the wilder the guess. Okay, let's see, run posture. As an instructor, I run down the hill with you guys. I don't have any nice wings or wheels or any of that stuff. So when I run down the hill, I have to have good posture. If I'm running down the hill and I'm leaning forward, I'm going to fall over. If I'm leaning back, I'm going to be totally unstable. So when I run down the hill, I'm kind of in this position here, keeping my weight straight down through my body and keeping my knees way bent because there's all kinds of crap down there, and I do mean crap. So yeah, I've stepped in all kinds of stuff. I've only fallen a couple of times, but and all the times I've run down a hill. So when you're running down a hill with a glider, you want to be able to run down the hill so that you're not leaning forward. Tends to make you want to fall over. Leaning back, not good. So okay. So as far as posture, run down the hill more upright. It's not leaning does not make the glider go any faster. If the thing makes you go faster, is the same thing in the air. Faster, slower. So running for takeoff, I want to be able to go faster. I may need to pull the bar in a little bit. Okay, let gravity do the work. Flare timing is all about feel. If you can feel, then you can know the flare timing. There's a guy at, I think it was at Wallaby or Quest, he did this nice little video. It shows the guy coming in for a landing, he gets down into ground effect, he's skimming along in ground effect, and he lets go, and then he goes and pushes and flares and lands.
You were showing trim speed.
He wanted to show you that there's time. It's not this tiny little moment. And then when you do flare with just as much as you need to. So if you're gripping, the only way you can get a flare out is if you just grab it on out there. Okay? But if you got a light touch, you can flare and go, okay, there we go, that's enough, and just hold it, smile, and settle down. So you don't want to use the one-size-fits-all flare. You want to use a flare that's going to be more like the appropriate amount. What's a flare like in a 30-mile-an-hour wind?
Barely at all.
Barely at all, yeah.
No, you keep it pulled in. So really, it's everything in between that. And you'll find even for a calm wind situation, you don't have to put that much effort into it as long as you are moving your weight back in relation to the glider. So this bar thing that you're holding on to, that bar thing is just a convenient place for you to push against. It's pushing your weight back that makes the glider land. It's not pushing the bar thing out. So when you start pushing the bar thing, the down tubes away from you, then you could be putting your feet forward. Of course, then you come down hard and you go, man, good thing I stuck my feet forward. I was coming down hard. Well, why did you come down so hard? Well, because you stuck your feet forward. But of course, you're still, that's how your body's dealing with it. Oh man, I came down, oh geez. Guys have bruised their heels and stuff, come down so hard. So you want to be able to do a nice soft landing? Do the pendulum thing. The pendulum, the bottom of the pendulum moves the most, the top of the pendulum moves the least. Top of your hang strap barely is moving. Down lower, it's moving more. Where your head is, it moves a little more. Your feet are the very bottom, that's the power part. You want to use that power. Okay, flare time.